Welcome back this afternoon to our session. We welcome you and all of you on the cloud, in the ether. This afternoon, we're going to delve even deeper into the mystery of plants, how things are connected, not just here on Earth to the elements of the Earth, but also to the sky. Might come as a surprise to some of you, but plants are very sensitive, and they feel the energy of the sky. We know that from how the moon affects us as well as plants. And so I hope to touch a little bit upon that and talk to you all about that. But before we begin, let's take a minute to try to feel that, to feel the cosmic energy that abounds here on the earth, and how we're connected to that. And let's take a moment in prayer. And I'm going to invite Wendy to light our candle again and to initiate this exercise in connection.
Mindful that the light that shines from this candle comes from the womb of the hive, from the life of bees, and also radiates out from the anomalous interlocking spirals of the sunflower. What sower walks over earth, which hands sow inward seeds of fire? They go out from our fists like rainbow curves to frozen earth, young loam, hot sand, and sleep there quietly, drinking up our lives and exploding it into pieces for the sake of a sunflower that we haven't even seen. Let the young rain of tears come. Let the calm hands of grief come. It's not all as evil as we may think. A poem by Rolf Jacobson, To the Sunflower.
This afternoon, I'm going to take the lead and speak to you guys a little bit about Ishim, our mother corn. And please, Wendy, if you want to interrupt me for any reason, I would welcome that.
Thank you.
Yes.
I promise not
to. I wanted to begin with a reading, if I may. It's a reading from a book a translation of a book written in the ancient Quiche, the Book of Counsel, as it is called, Popol Vuh. Pop means woven mat. It's the mat that the council members would sit on. Vu means paper or book. And it's the story of creation for the Quiche. One of the interesting and unique examples of Maya writing about creation. And what strikes me is this reference to planting that emerges in this account. This is the account. Here it is. Now it still ripples. Now it still murmurs, ripples. It sighs, still hums, and it is empty under the sky. Here follow the first words, the first eloquence. There is not yet one person, one animal, bird, fish, crab, tree, rock, hollow, canyon, meadow, forest. Only the sky alone is there. The face of the earth is not clear. Only the sea alone is pooled under all the sky. There is nothing whatever gathered together. It is at rest. Not a single thing stirs. It is held back, kept at rest under the sky. Whatever there is that might be is simply not there. Only the pooled water, only the calm sea, only it alone is pooled. Whatever might be is simply not there. Only murmurs, ripples, in the dark, in the night. Only the maker, modeler alone, sovereign plume serpent, the bearers, begetters, are in the water, a glittering light. They are there. They are enclosed in quetzal feathers, in blue-green, thus the name, plume serpent. They are great knowers, great thinkers in their very being. And of course there is the sky. There is also the heart of sky. This is the name of the God as it is spoken. So there were three of them as heart of sky who came to the sovereign plume serpent when the dawn of life was conceived. How should the sowing be? And the dawning? Who is to be the provider, nurturer? Noah, por favor. We'll move to the sides. Thank you. And so, in these accounts, these rare accounts of a people's conception of origin, of creation, really begins with their understanding of planting. I think it's revelatory how an agricultural people who depended on plants as their sustenance, put center and with great importance the act of growing, of planting and agriculture. And so we tell the story of corn. Who is to be the nurturer, the provider? Well, corn becomes that for this people. For the Maya people, and over time, for all of humanity. We really are dependent on corn as a people, as a human race. It is spread throughout the corners of the earth. It's revered, and it truly became the provider and the sustainer of life on our planet. And so, Noah, these ideas of emergence out of nothingness, is really beautiful. I believe in it. It comes from this awe, I think, of nature and of the energies that are critical for the creation of life. Sky, earth. Heart of sky, heart of earth. These two very, very powerful and unique places in our cosmos that really was the generating force for life. And so we think of the sky, we think of the sun and the moon as being these tremendous forces for growth, for nurturing, for generating that life. And so the Popol Vuh, one source. Later, different sources as well began to emerge as we began to understand some of the hieroglyphic texts. A beautiful story of discovery, one that deserves its own course and many hours of discussion. But over the course of 50 years of work by great scholars and artists and epigraphers, we began to glean from these hieroglyphic texts an understanding of this creation. And so another source begins to emerge, where we begin to see, once again, the same concerns and the same reference and reverence to agriculture. And so the next slide is from a vessel. This is the beautiful vessel called the Base of the Seven Gods. Once again, they're gathered together in the darkness, these deities pondering on what the creation will be. And one of those very important deities that emerges out of this is this force, this energy of nature, which is the lightning bolt. Lightning being associated to water being, of course, the source of life on our planet. These lightning bolts are present at the creation and at the setting of the three hearthstones of creation. We have an example of these in this picture. The first example where they are being offered to a very important deity, God El. Here's one stone, a second stone, and then the third stone is the one he's sitting on. And they're both identified as being stones, made out of stone. Next slide. And the lightning god. In classic Maya, Chak, or Yopat, is the deity who splits the first mountain, the mountain of Pashil in the east, and the mountain, as it splits, out of the mountain emerges the first grains of corn. These are the seeds that are ground by the gods to create the first humans. The force of the blow and the energy of the lightning tinging certain seeds, some too close to the fire turn black, some red, some yellow, and others white. These are the colors of our human race. And so we are ground by those, we're made out of that corn, and we begin our lives here on earth. Next slide. Hit it one more time. In Quiriguá, there's a Stella C. Another beautiful example of the texts that describe this creation, this moment of creation, the setting of the three hearthstones. And this is the beginning of time, 130000. That the completion of the 13th Baktun. This is time for the Maya. And this is how they wrote their texts and expressed their time. This is the beginning of time. Forahau et kumku. The heart is manifested. The hearth. 3 stones are bound. It was their sowing. Once again, they planted these stones in the middle of the sky. And the 2 actors are the jaguar paddler and the stingray paddler. The stones again, the jaguar stone, the serpent stone, and the water stone. It was the closing of the 13th Baktun, the beginning of a new creation. Next slide. So these paddler gods are really quite unique characters. They appear sometimes in the text as ancestors or cartouches above a ruler. They're overseeing dedication moments of dedication. And who better to refer to than the 2 characters that were at the dedication of the creation. So to anchor yourself in time back to the moment of creation was a really important thing to do as a ruler. And they're oftentimes seen with the corn god, and there's a really beautiful depiction of him in these bones that were inscribed, found in Tikal, where they're rowing across the sky, bringing the corn god to his place of final rest in the sky. And there you can see the 2 paddler gods, one at the bow, one at the stern, and the corn god in the middle, accompanied by a series of animals that were important. Oftentimes, the paddler gods are referred to as night and light, night and day. So there were darkness and light. They were opposites. They were polar opposites of each other. And so perhaps we're referring to the beginning of time, of the passage of time, the appearance of the night sky, the appearance of the daytime sky, possibly the sun and the moon as well. Next. And then there's this principal deity. Who is this bird deity? Who is this deity that is present, omnipresent in the center of the sky? He appears sometimes as a bird, sometimes as a humanoid. He's called Itzamna, the great sorcerer, the first sorcerer. And here he is in his human guise, seeming to conjure up a bowl full of sky. And we know that sky because of the sky band emerging out of here. A skull that is also part of the, possibly even a seed. So it's emerging out of this bowl. Another sky band down below. This tells us that this is happening in the sky. And this act of conjuring is a really crucial part of the creation. It's a verb that occurs in many instances where a ruler or a deity is bringing something out of nothingness, making something tangible that is intangible, making something visual that you cannot see. And this is the act of conjuring. Next slide. Tsap. Tsap means to grasp. And the curious instance here is this hand grasping a fish. That's the verb, to grab something. The fish dives deep into the water and is able to capture something that is very slippery and elusive. The hand can do that as well. If you were to plunge your hand into the water is the underworld, and the denizens of the underworld are fish, the creatures of the underworld. It's also a symbol for bloodletting, because it's a process. In order to reach something that is slippery and intangible and hard to grasp, like a fish, if you were skillful enough to plunge into the water with your hand and grasp a fish, well, there might be a chance that you would be injured and spined by their dorsal fin. And so it's a double meaning. You're going into some place that is very difficult to hold on to. You're bringing out information that's very difficult to comprehend or explain or express. And so we see that being used as a metaphor for this creation, for bringing something out of nothingness. And the principal bird deity is just that. It's the first wizard, the first conjurer, the first person or god that is able to bring something to light, something out of nothingness. Yes, Noah. Another great source for understanding was this monument in Palenque, the tablet of the cross. And once again, we see images of the principal bird deity perched up here in the sky, up above in the center, the bloodletter, the stingray spine. Next slide. We know it's the sky because of the sky band at the bottom. And on this text is a really interesting depiction, because now we're beginning to see some dates associated to that depiction and that description of the creation. And once again, we have the completion. Well, first of all, the birth of this mythical first mother. She's the sort of the mother of the gods. She's called Lady Muanmat, the progenitor deity. She's born prior to the creation on December 5th, 3121 BC. And then almost 5 years later, 6 years later, the completion occurs where the hearth at nadir, or the hearth is set. We still didn't understand that it was at nadir until much later. David Stewart often said it was at Tichan, the edge of the sky. And so we were wondering why would it be the edge of the sky? Later, as we were studying the texts and beginning to glean out a little more information and apply astronomy to this event, we noticed something really interesting. That these two dates here, the August 13th, 3114, actually is a zenith passage. This is the date that the sun passes through the center of the sky. So on that date, the hearthstones of creation are set. Sun at the center of the sky, and the hearthstones are set. So where is this mythical location where these hearthstones are set? Well, we ran a computer program to show what the sky looked like at 3114 BC. And when we did that, we were just blown away. Next slide. Oh, we should say that the three hearthstones are oftentimes paired with a turtle, an image of a turtle. And when you come up and see the shell of the turtle here, you'll see why turtles have three shell, or three divisions of the shell always on the back of the shell. And so it's very appropriate to see that turtle constellation in Bonampak or the Madrid Codice depicting stones on the turtle's back or stars on the turtle's back. And this one from Bonampak especially is very evocative because there's really only one constellation in the sky that corresponds to those three stars. And so, next slide. It's Orion. And so the three stars in the belt of Orion, curiously enough, when we ran that program, on 3114 BC, the lead star of the three stars of the belt was passing through the center of the underworld. This was pretty astounding to us because, they're not passing through the center of the underworld anymore. Over the course of 3,000 and some years, they began drifting away from that location. Now they mark the equinox. So if you were to watch Orion rise in the east, you would see the lead star, Mintaka, rise directly due east, and it would set due west, right? So what has happened? It's a cosmic drift. We call it precession. And so somehow, in the days of this king, these great kings of Palenque, they understood this. They knew that although today, or in their time, the stars of Orion were not passing through the center of the underworld, they calculated back in time to predict that this is where they would have been in 3114 BC, the creation date. So what does this mean? This is really curious and a head scratcher for us. It was a puzzle Go back a couple of slides. Back to this. So the creation date happens. The 3 hearthstones are set in the center of the sky. And then time continues. 542 days pass. And actually I didn't have the date on there, but it's February 5th, 3112 AD, or BC, is the dedication of the Wak Chan. And that just happens to be the nadir passage. So the sun is passing now through the middle of the center of the underworld sky, and the Wak Chan is set. 6th sky place. And the 6th sky place, we think, is the zenith. So here we are talking again, heart of sky, heart of earth. Center of the sky, center of the earth. That was really cool, we thought. And so, and then comes the birth of the triad of Palenque, who we'll talk a little bit more about, but we believe that they're a version of the hero twins, the sun and the moon. Let's go back again, forward, one more. So what is the hearth of creation? Well, it's like any other house. It's a dedication of a house. We're creating the structure that's going to sustain us, that's going to protect us, the sky. And this is the proverbial hearth of the sky. Another slide. And so, like any hearth in any house, this is the place of sustenance. This is the place where life emerges. And today, in modern astronomy, it's actually known that Orion is the birthplace of stars. And so it is like the mother of the sky. You know. The Maya didn't know that before, but it seemed like that. It's a triadic order in Orion. The stars of that triad, with the southern stars of the belt of Orion and the center star of the belt, they form a perfectly equilateral triangle. And that wouldn't be missed by such observant people. And so not only did the Orion function as this marker in the sky, as a guide for orienting ourselves, really, it served as a starting point. It was place of departure for this creation that occurred. And they wanted to make sure that they stated that their statement was based on scientific knowledge. They would never be able to see that. It was way back in the deep mythical time. But they felt it, they knew that. They knew that that was the case. And so that was important. Next slide. And so we have these images of the corn god emerging and being born out of the earth. Very evocative images. And I want to focus especially on the left side image where he's emerging out of the turtle shell. Other images show gods being born out of trees. And we'll talk a little bit more about that because trees are really evocative of that connection between the sky and the earth. In fact, Wak Chan, when we saw in the image of the Temple of the Cross, is this cross-like element, is this vertical cross-like element that is established in the center of our earth. It was the axis mundi, if you will. It was the center of our cosmos. It's what held the sky apart. And it seems this movement of the sky, this movement of these astronomical bodies are marking space out, and they're stretching space to its limits. Solstices, the vertical, zenith, nadir. And so three-dimensional space is created. And so this image on the left is particularly interesting because we begin to are introduced now to the hero twins, the actors of this phenomenon. They are poised on either side of the turtle shell, and their father, the first father, the corn god, they're resurrecting their father out of the milpa, the cornfield, and you'll see that the turtle has these cross hatches, which we think represents the milpa, the planting of the cornfield. Next slide. It's a beautiful plate that was found in the Petén, and you'll notice that the center of the plate has been punctured. It was ritually killed because it was a funerary vessel. And so you have to release the soul of the vessel. It's punctured. And curiously enough, it's right on the crack of the turtle. And so we see once again on the left-hand side, click that twice. We see the names of those two individuals on the left and the right. Hunahao on the left, we know he's the sun. On the left, on the right, he has jaguar markings on his cheek. It's Yashbalam, first jaguar. That's the moon. And so what we see here is actually a depiction of creation, and not just a fanciful depiction, it's actually scientifically correct. And this was a realization that happened to me just when I began to really study astronomy, what actually happens in the sky. On what date does this occur in in space, in our time, when sun and moon are poised on either side of the horizon? Can anybody say? No? This happens every month. A full moon. Exactly. A full moon, because the moon is on one side of the sky, directly opposite to the sun. To me, that was pretty cool, but I wasn't done yet, and the surprises kept coming, because I went back to the creation date and I looked back on to see what the sky looked like on that day. This time I wasn't focused on Orion, I was focused on the sun and the moon. And sure enough, on that date, it's a full moon. And that just blew me away. Because now we're seeing that artwork is not just depicting a fanciful idea of creation, it's actually encoded inside this art is a great and deep knowledge of the sky. And this is scientific knowledge, because they were able to predict what the moon looked like back almost 3 millennia. So that was really cool. And that we'll come back to this image again because it's very, very critical. The hero twins again. These are the ball players. These are the guys that are planters. They begin the process of resurrecting corn, their father. In fact, the story says that they go into the underworld to fight against the lords of the underworld for 9 days. They travel through the 9 houses of the underworld and are confronted by all the challenges of the gods of the underworld. In the Petén, a region in the Petén, it was looted, so we're not exactly sure. But now I believe this plate is in, say, the Brooklyn Museum, maybe somewhere. Anyway, they're in the underworld for 9 days. Well, it just so happens that corn takes 9 days to germinate. And so we think that this story is actually a story about the challenges that the seed faces in the underworld before they resurrect, right? So they're going into the underworld. They're faced with cold, the coldness. They're faced with animals that can attack it. They're faced with fire. They're faced with different challenges. And those are the same challenges that a vulnerable little seed plant or a corn seed would face before it emerged as the corn. We see the skull deep inside the earth. We'll talk more about that. The skull is the bone. It's the seed. Bak, bone, bak, seed. So here we're telling the story of corn again and how it emerges. Next slide. And so here we are, the sun and the moon opposite the horizon, the setting of the nadir, and the setting of the zenith. This was all encompassed in that telling of the story in a beautiful way in different texts throughout the history of the classic period. Next slide. And so let's turn to more historical time. We saw mythological time, and now we begin to really delve into the process of corn, where it came from, where it originates. Next. And today, corn is just this monstrosity of a plant. It can't survive on its own. It has developed into this beautiful ears of corn that are sheathed and protected from the elements. How did that become? What caused that to develop? And we know now it's over a millennia that it occurred, and a careful process of selection, human selection of seed, in order to take what was once wild to create a domesticated version of that. And so we once again turn to imagery of the ancient times, even older than the classic period. This is early Zapotec, where we believe actually the Isthmus of Mexico, one of the great sources of corn, the original corn, where we begin to see depictions of the earth as a very important source of life. And we'll see the earth monster emitting clouds of water and smoke or clouds. And foliage growing from the corners here. This, by the way, is a monument that just returned to Mexico after many, many years that it was gone, and it was in a private collection. And it returned back to Chalcatzingo just only a couple of years ago, really. Next slide. And so in these areas of the isthmus and also in Guerrero, where we think actually the source of a teosinte, a specific type of teosinte was found, where corn is found deep inside the caves where people were inhabiting or seeking refuge in some caves in the Rio Balsas area in Guerrero. The first evidence was found in the metates that were being used to grind corn, hidden and stored and preserved in the crevices of these metates. And you know there's a volcanic stone that has little pits and bubbles. That corn was preserved there. And the starches from that original teosinte were recovered and analyzed and identified as being not teosinte anymore, but now a version of the more modern maize. And so that's about 8,700 BC. And over time, you know, we began to see the spreading of that phenomenon throughout the Mesoamerica. Of course, these cobs were just tiny, only maybe 2 to 3 inches at max. Nothing like Roxanne's corn, which is almost a foot long. That's incredible. And so over time, we began to see this development into what it becomes today. But truly, the origins happen in this sort of it's like the delta, the Tigris and Euphrates delta, you know, where the first wheat is developed. This is a very rich area in Mesoamerica where such a phenomenon could occur, and these early agricultural people really took their time and care to begin to develop the nurturer, the sustainer of that group. And so we began to see this flourishing of culture and society. And of course, along with the, because corn begins to function as an anchor of a society. It allows them to remain in one place for longer periods. It sustains that society, it lifts it up because it provides extra time. You harvest, and then you're sustained by that for a period of time after the harvest. And so those, excuse me? The Rio Balsas, it's on the Pacific side of Mexico, sort of midway, sort of central Mexican. But the isthmus is where Mexico narrows. And so we have also evidence of that. Let's see the next slide. In the examples of Gila Nagitz, for instance, in Oaxaca, where maize is found as well, and a little later, but pretty comparable to the origin of maize as well. And this is, of course, the Zapotec culture. So we actually attribute the Zapotec as being one of the first cultures to emerge as a very powerful and very centralized societies. Next slide. Coxcatlan in Tehuacan. The Tehuacan Valley is also central Mexico. Some of the earliest agriculture is found here. Squash and beans and chile. Those were the really sort of the staples before corn even, as Wendy has expressed and shared with us. And so these are the places where we began to really understand the true history of corn and how it emerged in early societies. Next slide. And in caves, of course, the caves were used as burial places. And so we think that in the caves, ancestral remains were being found, not just by archaeologists, but the people who inhabited those caves later. They came across these skeletal remains of their ancestors. And a curious thing happens in our bodies when we disintegrate and when we are turned to dust. Our bones disintegrate. Almost every single bone in our body, the very last bone that remains is our teeth. It's the hardest bone in our body, and that's because of the enamel. And so what people were doing was going into caves and they were finding little seeds, little teeth. And so this is where the story comes of the birth of the corn god, the striking of the opening up of the cave, and the finding of the little bones in the cave. That's what I think, anyway. And so there's a funny story that I tell about how we say we refer to our little bones as when we smile, right? We're pelando la mazorca. So when we take a corn cob and rip open the husk, we're pelando la mazorca, right? So we're smiling, we're showing our teeth. And that's perhaps why native peoples refuse to smile when they're being photographed. And it's polite because you don't want to show anybody that you're mortal, right? That you don't want to show this aspect of you that is associated to death. So we began to see this relationship between humans, corn, life, and death, right? Seeds are bones. What do we do with bones? We put them back into the Mother Earth, into the caves, into the ground, into the milpa. And what happens? Well, regenesis. And so we'll talk more about that. Next. Today, caves are still being used in ceremony. Many offerings are placed in caves. I've attended some of these ceremonies in caves in Chiapas and Guatemala. And it's always a very, very powerful moment. We're praying for rain, for the comings of the rain. We're praying for Chak to split the mountain open again, to bring the lightning, to bring the rains. And so offerings are always placed at the caves, and many archaeological remains have been found there, deposits of offerings. Next slide. And so we begin to see this emergence of this concept of the corn god, the emergence of this deity that symbolizes corn, that is omnipresent in the agricultural society. He emerges out of flowers sometimes, he emerges out of trees. This is a really beautiful one that is from Haina, the island of Haina. The young corn god, he always has this tonsured forehead, a bare forehead, and tassels, the corn tassel of his hair. And he's pelando la mazorca. They've opened up his sheath. Next. But even earlier than that one, Middle Formative Olmec, pre-classic. This is before the classic period of the Maya. 1500 BC, we begin to see this concern with this central icon, this world tree. The corn god acts like the world tree. He's emerging out of the center of a directional symbolism, a quincunx we call it. 5 directions, the corners and the center. And this is a really 2 examples of that where we see this concern for this directional representation. And this really becomes it develops hand in hand with agriculture. Agriculture is rising and science is rising. People are starting to become aware of the cosmos. They're starting to try to identify with the cosmos, and how do we represent ourselves as people with an understanding of a greater cosmic order. Next. We see in San Bartolo a very early classic period. This is classic because we begin to see dates and hieroglyphic writing in there. Next. This structure that was uncovered fairly recently revealed these beautiful murals, pre-classic or early classic, because we're beginning to see this corn god with this snarling jaguar face, like the Olmec representations of the corn god. He's offering a gourd with the symbol of the moon on it. So we know, I think it's pretty clear that there might be water in there. An offering is made in a cave. This is the representation of the cave. Stone, and then these natural beings, a snake, a jaguar, birds. These are, what are they called? Those birds that weave baskets in the trees. Or a pendula. And see what this woman is holding in her hand. That's an offering of tamales, corn tamales, given to the ancestors or the gods inside the cave. Next slide. And just behind that cave is this fantastic view of birth. A gourd exploding with this blood or amniotic fluid just spilling out, and a little god emerging out of that. These guys here with umbilical cords still attached to them. Just amazing. This is truly a connection back to agriculture and our source, our true nurturer, the sustainer. This is agriculture at its best, and we're trying to replicate what the gods are doing, and they're sowing and planting in our lives as well. We're repeating the same actions that the gods took. Next. And so these representations of orientation really begin to abound in offerings, funerary offerings or dedicatory offerings, where we're beginning to see this organization of space in this quincunx, corners, 4 corners. We spoke about the 4 corners that are very important to us. The center. This, I believe, was an Olmec offering of jade. Next. And so this act of setting the boundaries of space is really critical and really beautiful. It's depicted in the Popol Vuh, how space is created. The fourfold sighting, the fourfold measuring, the fourfold staking, having the cord, stretching the cord through the heavens on the earth. This is the stretching out of space, the making of three-dimensional space. Next. And we see these shapes, the quatrefoils. When we are planting tomorrow, we're acting that. We're doing the same thing, the same action. We grab our dibble stick, our planting stick, and we pierce the earth, and then we make our hole. And that action of cross-like action, four corners again, we spread the earth in order to receive the seed. So this is the act of piercing the earth again, splitting the earth to receive the seed. Next. And so modern Maya speak about space like this. They talk about the holy space, the space that it's our community lies in. It's oftentimes delineated by or marked by these great mountains on the four corners. And so we see alignment to those mountains in ancient times. Certain sites are aligned to make it so that the sun on a very important date would rise up out of the mountain. And so you would be in the center of the village and watch the sunrise out of the mountain. Why was this important? Well, it was timekeeping. You were able to see the progression of the movement of the sun over the course of the year, and you would know when to plant. And so these great mountains were called Chibal. There's a place, the nurturing place, the place of abundance, the place of growth. Next. Sometimes they weren't depicted as mountains, they were trees actually. So these great trees on cosmic horizon. And many of them were represented in vessels that were used as offering and burning of copal. These are pregnant trees. The ceiba was imagined as being pregnant. So these were mother trees. These were trees that allowed creation to happen. Next one. And once back again to San Bartolo, these same trees are depicted with offerings on them. And the principal bird deity, once again, standing on top. And Izapa showing of this tree with the roots in the earth, a crocodilian monster at the base. Other depictions show ancestral trees with their fingers, hands digging into the earth like roots. And this is a beautiful tree in Palenque, one of the last of the ceibas, with the winter solstice sun emerging out of the trunk of the tree, rising up into the sky. It was thought that the tree would let the sun emerge out of the sky, and then on the west, the tree would receive the sun and it would descend into the underworld through the tree. So that was really beautiful. Next. And so really this understanding of astronomy really comes hand in hand with agriculture, you would imagine, because you would want to succeed in planting, and so an understanding of the seasons is very critical. And so astronomy is born, and people begin to watch the sky. And we call it horizon-based astronomy because we're using the horizon as a marker, as a reference point. And different things on the horizon, such as temples or mountains or trees or whatever, that was fixed, a fixed point on the horizon was able to help you to identify from a particular location where the sun was moving over the course of a year. And curiously enough, in this tropical environment of the Mesoamerica, along with the normal positions of the sun at its maximum excursions, right, and the equinox, we had this event called the zenith, where the sun passes through the center of the sky, right? If you go above the tropics, above 21 degrees, then the zenith doesn't occur for the sun because it's too far north. But within the tropics, you begin to see that. And it occurs twice a year, once on its course to the north and once on its course to the south. And so this was very interesting to the agricultural people because just by coincidence, when the sun was moving to the north and passed through the zenith, that first event also coincided with the comings of the rain. This was around or late April, early May. And so people were aware of this. And people in the field presumably were planting, had their fields prepared. Maybe they had their dibble stick. And during their rest period, they were drinking their pozol. Somebody might have left their stick standing and planted just perfectly straight. And then all of a sudden realize there's no shadow. It was midday and the sun was in the center of the sky, and then there was no shadow. And so that was a very important moment, realization, really. And so they planted their corn that day and then waited. They kept waiting. Next slide. These are examples of the observation of zeniths by ancient people. And they actually created structures where a hole in the ceiling would allow the ray of light to pierce the darkness. And they were waiting for this moment. Next. And so at this latitude, 15-degree latitude, is a really curious phenomenon occurs. And this is where we believe some of the stories begin to emerge for the classic period, the Maya classic period. Copan and Izapa are almost exactly on that line. And Izapa, we know, is really important pre-classic period site, which was a place of emergence of these images of the tree, of the corn god, the hero twins. And Copan, of course, is a pre-classic site, but also a classic period site. And at this latitude, something extraordinary occurs. Next slide. And you'll have to hit this a couple times. So the first zenith passage occurs, and people planted and they counted to the summer solstice when the sun stopped moving, and then they counted back again and hit it again a couple times. And they counted 105 days from one zenith passage back to the next zenith passage. And they realized, well, our corn is ready. Let's harvest. This is in August, on the first beginning of August. That's about 105 days, 3 months approximately, the gestation period of the corn. So it went from being a seed in the ground to a full mature cob, and they were harvesting. Here it's a little bit slower because it's colder. It's more northerly. But down there, some people had 2 seasons of corn during the year. And so this was the first one. It lasted 105 days. And then they waited, they began counting more time. Maybe they were putting pebbles in a bucket or something, or in a pot, and realized that, well, from the zenith passage to the winter solstice and back to the next zenith passage when they could plant again, that was 260 days. What was so great about that? Well, it just so happens that 260 days is 9 months. And what is that? That's our gestation period. And so what's going on here? I mean, the sky is saying something really intriguing, really special. Corn and humans comprise the full year of the sun. One side is corn, the other side is human. And we're divinely interconnected. Not the corn was made by the humans, right? We developed corn. But the corn is within us as well, you know. And so we were intimately connected. We were divinely connected and the sun was the evidence of that, the movement of the sun. And so begins the great calendar of 260 days. That's the ritual calendar of the Maya, the Tzolk'in. So when you were born, when you were conceived, 260 days later, it was the same day. So it repeats itself, right? You were born on one rabbit. 260 days later, you're back to one rabbit. So you're truly, that was your name. And so we see that happening. And one of the first places that we see the Tzolk'in and the sacred calendar occurring, the 260-day calendar, is in that very location. In the Isthmus, the Zapotec people began to use it. And then it becomes adopted by the classic period Maya later. Next. And so finally, before we delve into even deeper stuff, does anybody need a break, a restroom break or anything? Yeah, let's stretch out a little bit. Let's take a minute and just stretch, take it in, because this is a lot of information. Thank you for your patience, and it's a lot to take in. I appreciate your attention. So let's come back and ground ourselves again on the earth again, because we've been in the sky a lot and talking about astronomy. But I want to bring you to Palenque, a beautiful place in the southern part of Mexico. This is in the tropics of Mexico, one of the last rainforests. True jungle type rainforest, the northernmost rainforest that's here in North America. And in the edge of that tropics was this beautiful place called Palenque. That's what we know is its modern name. But in the ancient times, after we began to understand the hieroglyphs, and actually Palenque was the birthplace of epigraphy. That's where the first understandings of these texts was developed, because it has some of the most beautiful texts, some of the longest texts, some of the most complete texts, well preserved, and so Palenque has always been considered as just a prime example of classic period art and architecture. And for some reason in my life, I was blessed to be a part of that discovery and lived my life there and participated in the excavations. And I was tasked in drawing the excavations. And so I was a project artist and began my work as a mapper. And I was a machetero. I cut trails and brechas for the theodolite. And our director finally, he saw that I was pretty good at drawing things, and he said, well, why don't you take your hand at doing some drawing and do some elevation drawings and plan view drawings. And then later on, I actually met the woman that did those drawings and the paintings of San Bartolo, the ones that you saw. And she taught me how to do 3D drawing. And so I began to do three-dimensional drawing of the site. And that really is when something woke up in me, because when you begin to see things in 3 dimensions, you kind of lift yourself up off the ground in a visual way. You have to begin to really think of things in 3-dimensional aspect. And so that really, I think, was the spark and trigger that really began to fuel my understanding about the site and its alignments. And so we began to study the astronomy of Palenque. Today we know that this hieroglyph that you see here, it's a skull. But if you notice to the right of the skull, it has an element that's emerging out of the skull here, right there, on both sides, right? And originally it said, no, that's a rabbit. That's a depiction of the rabbit. And so that's the Temple of the Moon. We're going to call it the Temple of the Moon because the rabbits are associated to the moon. And they said, there's this rabbit's teeth, big buck teeth. And so we said, okay. Later, we began to understand that this is actually a toponym. We call it a toponym because it's a place name, right? It describes a location. Bak, the bone. Nal, the sprout. So this is a leaf that's emerging out of the bone, right? So it's a sprouting bone. And so it's clear that it's not a rabbit skull. And so we call this place now Bacanal, the place of the sprouting bones. And why? Why do we say that? Well, this is the next chapter of the concept of corn. Next slide. And I'm going to focus on one temple, and this is the Temple of the Inscriptions. One of the most fantastic of buildings that was ever conceived of and created by the ancient people. And to our benefit and our knowledge and our luck, this temple was still standing after almost 1,200 years of abandonment, and the forest taking over, and the trees growing on top of it. Huge trees were growing out of the roof of these structures. When Mosley came here in the late 1800s, he cleared, for the very first time after almost 1,200 years, the forest, and then we began to see the remnants of this great culture. So the Temple of the Inscriptions, at that time, it was thought to be a ceremonial temple that possibly was the centerpiece of a great city. That city, next slide, please. Today is almost 10% uncovered. When we mapped the site in 1997 to 2001, we recorded over 1,300 structures. And this is just the site center. This is the ceremonial center, the core of the site. And the iconic palace of the site. Oh my God, these are just beautiful, beautiful architecture that everybody should go to, at one time in their life. It's like the Great Pyramids of Egypt, like the temples of Angkor. This is a great civilization that set its mark here in this beautiful, beautiful setting. The water in this site is just extraordinary. There's more than 7 perennial streams that run through the site, through the course of the whole plateau that this site is set on. And so it's on the northern mountains of Chiapas, overlooking the plains of Tabasco. As the crow flies, the coast of the Gulf Coast of Mexico is only about 100 kilometers away. And they say that from the Temple of the Inscriptions, you can see the lighthouse in Ciudad del Carmen on a clear day. And so this situated in a beautiful place. They could see for miles. They could oversee a great territory, and that was the territory of Bacnal. The site itself was called La Camha because it was the great water. And when you go there, you see why. It's just a myriad of cascades flowing through the site. It's just an extraordinary setting. But we'll focus only on the Temple of the Inscriptions because this temple, in a way, encompasses all of the cosmology of the Maya in one structure. The pyramid itself is the sacred mountain. We speak about the sacred mountain, the mountain of sustenance, the place where growth happens, the Chibal, right? This is the mountains of sustenance. And you'll see that it has 9 layers, 9 levels of the lower platform, what we call the substructure, the platform. 9 levels representing the 9 levels of the underworld. The superstructure is 5 doorways, a really elegant roof comb on the structure that right now is mostly destroyed, and a great stairway that goes up into the temple. And when it was first uncovered and discovered, one of the first archaeologists that worked on this was Alberto Ruz Lugier, who had originally worked in the Yucatan Peninsula. And he was called upon to do the final restoration, what you see here. You saw in the earlier picture the collapsed rubble of the stairway, the platforms, and he used pretty good deductive reasoning to put it back together the way it might have looked in the original. And we think he did a pretty good job. Next slide. So he began his work in the late 1940s, and here he is with one of the stucco masks that he discovered in the tomb, actually. And during his beginning of excavations, he was told about this slab of stone that was in the back of the chamber, one of the rear chambers of the temple. And it was a curious stone, a very large slab of stone that had various plugs on the surface of that stone. And he thought, well, maybe there's something underneath that. And so he began to excavate. And sure enough, when they pulled that stone up and out of the way, he discovered a stairway that descended into the core of the building. Next slide. And so that stairway led him down a series of steps, turned to the right, and then down another series of steps to the very heart of the temple. A total of 81 steps. And then at the base of that stairway was a great triangular doorway that was sealed with this massive triangular slab, which he carefully pried away and removed. And this was the scene that greeted him when he first opened up the temple, that tomb. At first, they thought it was just an altar or something. They didn't know that it was a burial place. So they brought some drills from Veracruz in Tabasco, where they were drilling for oil, and they drilled into the side of the big stone sarcophagus. And of course, they hit the hollow spot, and then they decided that was probably not such a good idea. And so they began their process of discovery and uncovering. But just imagine, coming upon this and what you would think, it's just, it blows you away. This stone is one slab. It's the lid of a sarcophagus. This thing measures about approximately 3 meters wide by about 9 meters long. And so it weighs probably close to 5 tons. And then the sarcophagus itself below that. So next slide. Here's a better, clearer picture of the sarcophagus lid. Actually, in 2003? Our season in 2003, we were charged with arresting some of the filtrations that were happening on the roof of the structure. And then a decision was made that they were going to limit the visitations into the tomb. Because originally you could go down in there and look through a gate, a metal gate, and look at this, and actually be like within 8 feet from it. So that was decided that they would not do that anymore, and so they wanted to make a replica of this in the museum, which is currently there. And so he requested the drawings of this interior of the structure from the Institute of Anthropology and History in Mexico City, our chief archaeologist, Arnoldo Gonzalez. And they refused. They said, no, these documents are over 50 years old, so they're historic documents. So you can't even touch them. This was one of the great archaeologists of Mexico requesting that, and they said they denied him. And so he cleverly said, well, he approached me and he said, Alonso, man, you do drawings, right? Why don't you go in the tomb and make me a drawing of the inside of the tomb? And so he sent me down there for 2 weeks. And in the 2 weeks that I was down there, I measured every single inch of that tomb. And the vaulted ceiling, the sarcophagus, under the sarcophagus. Before we actually started that work, we went to flip the switch, to make sure that there was light inside there. And when we flipped the switch, all the bulbs popped. And so I said, well, we gotta do something about this. And because I was an electrician at that time, I rewired the tomb as well. And so I got a chance to actually to be on top of this thing in my socks and measuring. And this is what we see currently. Hanapakal. This is the great Hanapakal. Later we understood that his name represents the flowery shield of the sun. Pakal meaning shield. Notice the turtle on his pectoral. He's wearing a turtle. The tree emerging out of the center of his. So here he is, poised. A glyph for the sun here, a glyph for the moon here. So on the horizon, again, we're seeing that's the very same depiction of that turtle. Sun and moon on the horizon. This is the creation date. And here he is emerging out of the underworld. This is the maw of the underworld, the jaw, the skeletal jaw. It's the east. This is Lak Kin, the bowl of the sun in the east. And so he's emerging and being born really out of the womb of the earth. It looks almost like the womb. He's being born again. And he's going straight up the tree to his place in the zenith, just like the corn god. He's dressed like the corn god. He has the skirt of the corn god. He has the tonsured forehead. So this is, once again, he's telling the story of how it's his apotheosis. He's becoming that god. After his death, he's emerging. Next slide. So Kinichahao, Kin is that symbol right here. We call it the sun-eyed Lord, the resplendent Lord. He's like the sun, he's brilliant. Over the course of my years there, I started to notice that certain animals began to feature in this myth. And it just so happens that the turtle that he's wearing on his pectoral, that's the eye of the turtle. He's got the sun eye. So those are the kind of things that they incorporate, that's really beautiful for me as a botanist, as a naturalist, as an artist. I tend to pick up on those things, and those are the things that the ancient Maya very clearly recognized. So that's the shield of the sun. He's wearing the turtle. Next. But really, the beautiful thing that happens is this: the way he's being treated. The way his mortal remains are being treated. And we began to see that depicted on the sarcophagus itself. This is the big stone box that he was actually placed in. A great stone box that was decorated on all sides, all four sides. And a text running around the whole lid of it, stating his ancestors, his father, his mother, and grandfather, grandmother, and those individuals are depicted on the side of the box, of the sarcophagus. Next slide. And the curious thing is that this band that you see here is has a symbol for earth, Kab. So it goes from Chul Kab, Chul Kab, Chul Kab, holy earth, repeated over and over, all the way around. And then on this band, there's a crack wherever each ancestor is, and they are being born out of the earth. They're sprouting out of the earth with the trees that represent them. And here's this one. She's the Lady Ik, Yohol Iknal. She's represented as the avocado tree. This one, I think, is his father. He's represented as the zapote tree. And then there's the cacao tree. This is Lady Sakuk. She's represented as the cacao. And so a beautiful recognition of these ancestors as trees, as emerging from the earth. No, these ones aren't. These ones are actually Linda Shealy, who was my professor. Next one. And so when they lifted the sarcophagus lid, which just was an extraordinary task, and they set it in place with these railroad ties, lifted it up, and they discovered this really curious shape, this omega kind of shape, almost like a seed shape. And then, of course, his remains were discovered, beautifully decorated with jade pieces. Curiously, he had a sphere in one hand and a cube in the other, made out of jade. Kind of a esoteric or metaphysical kind of statement there. Next slide. But the most curious thing of all in this whole structure was this cycoduct that followed the course of all those stairs, going from the top of the slab that was covering the stairway, and then descended down each of those stairs along the side of the stairway. Basically, two slabs of stone butted up against the wall of the stairway, creating this unbroken tube that descends down to the bottom of the sarcophagus. And actually, they destroyed that part of it. It emerged through the doorway, through a crack in the doorway, and into the sarcophagus itself. And then I'm told, because a lot of that was destroyed in the excavation, it pierced one of the round plugs of the lid of the sarcophagus, and that was the source. It stopped there. So it went from there all the way up the stairway, out of the slab that was covering the stairway, into the front of the building, and then ended on one of the piers of the building, the front pier of the building. And so for a long time we were puzzled by what this represented. And over time we began to understand, but I wanted to point out that when germination happens in corn, what corn does, and most plants do, is that they first send a root, which is not heliotropic. It's a force that draws it to down into the earth, right? So that's the taproot. And then once it begins to establish itself, then it begins to send up a tube that emerges out of the seed, pierces the surface of the earth, and then stops growing, And then from that tube, the first leaves emerge, right? And that's what we call a coleoptile. And this is what we believe this is. This cycoduct is actually this coleoptile that is emerging out of the depths of that tomb to emerge onto the surface of the earth. Why would we say this? And I'm going to show you in a minute. Next slide. First of all, let's establish an alignment that occurs in this site. A very beautiful, what we call a hierophany. Hierophany coming from the term hieros, meaning sacred, and phani, meaning to appear or to be evident. It was a term coined by Mircea Eliade. And so what happens is that the alignment of this temple allows for a ray of light to occur through one of the western windows. And this light enters into the temple on the summer solstice. Very beautiful event, and we were privy to witness this for a number of years before we actually figured out what this really meant. Next slide. And so here's one of those early years when we were looking at this light coming in, and you'll see that it's beaming right about chest height on my shoulder here, and way in the distance there, that little sliver of light over here. And so presumably it would travel along the length of the floor, come up to my shoulder, and then pierce that window as well. But because of the height of the trees now, it doesn't ever reach that window. But we were puzzled by this and really quite frankly mesmerized by this occurrence. And so we began to really ponder upon it. And so, next slide. We remembered some of the history of the site, some of the dates in this site. And one of the key dates in the cross group, which is dedicated by the son of Hanapakal in 672 AD, it mentions that he is presented as the heir to the throne. He's presented as the son, and heir to the throne of Palenque. This is when he's a young boy. He's about 12 years old, and it said that it was a ceremony that lasted 5 days. And it began just prior to the summer solstice and culminated on the summer solstice of, I think it was 642 AD. And so we looked at the facade of this building, and curiously enough, there's these stucco sculptures that show various figures holding in their arms a young baby. And we know that this is Kambalam because he's kind of transformed into this god, Kawil, which has a serpent for his leg. And part of the name of Kambalam is serpent. So he's the serpent jaguar. And next slide, you'll see it a little clearer in these drawings. Here's the mother and father, or the grandmother and grandfather holding the child. And the cycoduct actually comes and ends in one of these, I think it's this one, where it comes out of the building and it terminates right here at the base of the sculpture. So this is a sacred mountain. This is a mountain god. And so the coleoptile ends here. And this mountain, of course, produces the grandmother. And she's holding the baby. And so we began to really ponder on that. And then finally it dawned like a flash bulb in my mind. And this only happened after I really began to understand the cycles of corn, after numerous visits to my friends' cornfields and watching corn grow. And I suddenly realized what was going on, because on the summer solstice, what occurs is, you remember when we're counting the process of the germination of corn. It began on the zenith passage. And then it goes to the summer solstice, and then back to the zenith passage when it's harvested. So the solstice really is the mid-life of corn, right? The halfway mark before it's able to harvest. And so what occurs in a cornfield at that latitude, at that date? Next slide. You go to the cornfield, and corn is the height of a human, right? It's in flower. The flowers are emerging. And then the first ears of corn are emerging off the side of the corn plant. The little tassels are visible. The little heads of corn are just beginning to receive their fertilization, right? Because what's happening is pollinization, right? The yellow pollen that's falling from the flowers is falling onto the hairs of corn, and those are being transported into each of the seeds, right? The flower of the sun, right? The rays of the sun, the pollen. And so we put two and two together. And next slide. And so we propose that this is a great moment of possibility of theatrical presentation, where you're utilizing the rays of the sun to represent something that's very, very, it's common knowledge, right? The people know this event. They know it because they're growing corn. They recognize that. But the ruler he's closer to the gods, right? He's supposed to be the intermediary for the gods. And so he has to behave much like the sun does, much like the gods do. You know? If you're planting rulers, you know, this is, you're giving life to a divine kingship, right? And so what better way to show that is by showing that the sun is actually blessing this young boy. And here's actually the cycloduct running down across out to the front of the building. And so we thought that this would be a really a key moment in the young boy's life, commemorating the fact that he's being blessed and taking on the mantle of rulership, and is a good candidate for divine kingship. That's my son, Max, who's now 21 years old, and his mom. You'll meet his mom tomorrow. Next slide. And then, if it wasn't enough, if that wasn't enough, and this is only for the God's eyes, because nobody was going to go inside there, you know. It's not a public display anymore. This is private. This is all codified information. We see that this sarcophagus is the shape, beautiful shape, with equilateral triangles on either side, right? And where do we see equilateral triangles? Orion. On Orion. Where's Orion? Right in the middle. There's the turtle. And so we propose, next slide, that it's a depiction of Orion. It's the place of that hearth, once again, where they planted the first hearth that gave rise to the corn god. Curiously enough, because this is a funerary monument, like that plate that had the corn god emerging and had a puncture right in the middle, right? You had to kill this monument to dedicate it as a funerary monument. But it was impossible to drill through here. You can't destroy that part. So what do you do to dedicate that? Well, you break off the corners. You break off 2 corners, because that's the only way to find the center, right? You take a string from this corner to this corner, and a string from this corner to this corner, and you would see where the center is. But now if you've broken off those 2 corners, you're never going to be able to do that. So once again, this is a very concerted effort to really codify information in a funerary monument that had great meaning, intense and very profound meaning of the origin of corn, of the process of agriculture, how agriculture affected us in our lives, and how a great ruler could utilize that information to project himself as this world tree, as this bakab, this great being that was a communicator and really the vehicle and conduit for that information, from the gods to the people. Pretty lofty stuff, man. I'm glad people aren't doing that no more. But this is really beautiful art, and really shows the magnitude of a story emerging and taking root and becoming the foundation of a society. And it's all about regenesis, right? It's all about the planting cycle.
Isn't it also proto-scientific in a way, meaning it creates these homologies, these relationships between astral events, earth events, and social governance, social and cultural forms. So in a simple way, it's a very deep depiction of anthropology, of the logos of the human being.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah, it's a cosmogram.
Exactly.
It's a cosmogram because this encompasses in a proverbial nutshell, right?
What did they crack the corners to keep it secret, occult?
Right.
So that it was very specific wisdom and knowledge not to be shared.
Possibly, yeah. Possibly. Right. Can we? We're going to finish this off. Curiously enough, Orion now rises in the east, as we said, on the equinox. And it just so happens that Pakal was born on the equinox, right? So he's predicting his future from a source, really an ancient source. Next. Let's just go through these real quick. We talked about this, the world tree, the ruler becoming the world tree. Next. Many depictions of that. The ruler serving as this tree of life for his people. Next. Architecture aligned to celebrate the zenith and the nadir. This is the moment of creation. So all of the structures in the palace are aligned to that moment. They're dedicated on those dates. Next. And then how does this translate to the living Maya? The living Maya are really a key component of our understanding, because this is, they hold the knowledge, unknowingly sometimes, because we forget this knowledge. Sometimes it's rejected. The kingships, the divine kingships, failed because of droughts. They couldn't call the rains anymore. And so people abandon the big cities and they drift away. But inside of their religion, next slide, they maintain a lot of that tradition. The farming, the agriculture, that knowledge is still present. Next. Their celebrations, they still celebrate Day of the Holy Cross on the zenith. Next. They celebrate the great mountain of sustenance, where all of our souls reside, the animal spirits. And so they have great celebrations that really evoke that knowledge. And they, maybe it's secretive, maybe it's hidden away. And some of the old ones, the wise ones, know about that. It's connection to the past. Today, there's a great resurgence of knowledge and wanting to learn about the ancient cultures. And so young people are being drawn to archaeology. Next. Zinacantan, they still erect a tree of life, and they climb, the jaguars and the spooks and the monkeys climb up the tree of life on the nadir passage when they erect the great tree. Next. And of course, Don Antonio, one of the last of the Lacandon, who still celebrate the traditions. We've been privileged to be part of these Balche rituals where we're going into altered states, drinking beverages that are sacred and communing with the spirits. These were the kind of traditions that these guys maintain still to this day, if Don Antonio is still doing it. Next. And just to be present at his cornfield during his dedications and his rituals and offerings, those are the kind of things that really have been crucial for my understanding and my education and my connection to that past. And so I thank you for bearing with me on this long story of corn. Jaya. Thank you.
Thank you.
And so to close, let's just ask for permission and the courage and the soul for our planting tomorrow. May it be a successful one. May the rains come as foretold, and may you guys all rest well and absorb and process some of these teachings. Thanks.
Wow.
Gracias.
Excuse me. So last year, a few of us, my sister's children and Cristiana Figueres, her children, and Troy and James, and Wendy and I went to Chiapas with you know who. And it was just one revelation after another, just completely saturated with this extraordinary experience that Alonso, having been raised in Chiapas and, being from this village, Tenejapa, where his father was a cacique, and really having the corn plant in your bones. So it was a very, very wonderful time. So I just want to give us a little shape of the schedule. Zazen is at 5:30, but you don't have to come, it's okay. But everyone who, is in there, that's wonderful. Some of you might want to rest or just have a sort of walk about and to bring the sky and the earth as we've been in the cave now, absorbing. It's like your extraordinary information, but also wisdom. And then tonight, we're going to see a film called The Pueblo Food Experience. And this is about what our good friend Roxanne Swenzel did to her family. That's a terrible thing, which is to take away all the junk food. They had to comply. And they went on to into a diet that was strictly based in this sort of experience of food sovereignty, the diet of the ancients. And they lost weight, diabetes came to an end, cholesterol dropped. I mean, it's just incredible outcomes in this experiment that she subjected her friends and family to. And the thing about Roxanne, I'm not a very tall person. She comes up to about here on me. Don't let size fool you. She makes sculptures taller than, out of clay, than this ceiling here for the United Nations and organizations and institutions all over the world. She also built this fantastic tower. It's called the Tower Gallery in Powake, where her work is. And she has the most joyful and determined presence, which you will experience tomorrow. So I'm so grateful. And just a little side note, Wendy has a cold. We just tested her for COVID. She's fine that way, but you heard her coughing, and we have ordered her to bed. Just absolutely rest, tea and rest, because tomorrow is going to, be asking a lot of her. So she's completely not allowed to get out of bed until tomorrow when we begin. But again, Alonso, thank you. I just felt so moved by, you bringing us into the tomb of Pakal. And, in a way, it was somehow like we were also a seed being planted in the past and finding, in that experience, what the future can be if we are able to actualize the vision of what it means to connect earth and sky. So thank you, old friend.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
See you at 5:30 in the Sendo, 6:30 for dinner, 7:45 for the film. The film is not long, so we can have an early night because we will be putting our fingers in the earth, making way for seeds.
Let me also just thank our visitors and guests from the internet and connection, the virtual connection. So thank you for listening and being with us here today. We feel your presence.
Oh, no, up there. Hey. See you later. Okay, everybody, thank you. Alonso.
Thank you. Gracias.